like to workshop a very specific question that I'm run up against in my more current work, and I'd like, as much as possible, to generate some feedback and sort of a little focus group on a specific issue that I've run up against methodologically here. So you can see the title here on my screen. I've rebranded this presentation as How to Treat Gender Fluidity and Measures of Respondent Sex. So a specific methodological issue that I've run up against, I'd like to frame for you, show you what I'm doing and how I've run up against it, and then spend the remainder of my time, my screen keeps going blank here, 14 minutes left, to get your feedback on how I ought to be treating this particular, how seriously I should be treating this particular issue. Here's the catch-22. As all of you know, as social scientists, respondent sex is sort of a staple in survey research, at least for when we're studying individuals. It's very normal, if not universal, to find out if we have a male or a female respondent, because our findings, the things we're interested in knowing about in most individual level research can differ quite a bit depending on whether a respondent is a male or female. So capturing that is important. Broadening this, especially in this sort of gender diversity reawakening that we've had in the last couple of years, this provides respect to respondents. So a lot of people don't fall into this traditional masculine-feminine, male-female dichotomy that we've tended to ask this in. And so in broadening this, we respect people who don't fall into this dichotomy of male-female, masculine-feminine. So since sex as a male-female dichotomy is an essential variable, what should we do with what end up being very small categories that fall outside of this dichotomy? That's the catch-22 that I'm going to frame at the end of this presentation here in about 5 minutes, and I want to get as much feedback as I can on this sort of methodological quandary that not just I am running up against, but I think we all will in the social sciences. People trying to get at this even before this sort of reawakening that we've been having. Here's a sort of pre-pandemic approach to asking about respondent gender or sex. I mean, this is found on the internet, and the top one is not specified, and who knows exactly what that's meant methodologically. Is that my gender or my sex has not been specified by nature, or is this a category somebody selects if they don't want to respond to this question? So I think it's unclear to the analyst what not specified means in this particular case. We have a female male here, but then we have diverse, we have other. So how might diverse and other differ here? Different people may select different items here. Is the analyst going to collapse those together? So people are wrestling with this question of how do we represent the diversity of sex and gender in our surveys. Here's another found on the internet that actually comes from a medical record. We have the male-female here. We have 3 different categories of transgender here, male to female, female to male, and unknown that the respondent can select here, and then unknown and ambiguous. And this is a direction we possibly could go in as social scientists. Transgender detail may be particularly important on this medical record, but we should ask ourselves if we should collect this level of detail if gender, and especially transgender, isn't a core topic in a survey. Transgender isn't a particular topic in the survey that I'm going to introduce here in a second, so it's not a road that I particularly got down. Here's another more recent item found on the internet. I call this the hodgepodge approach because it's kind of a mess. Female, male, not supplied, other, they, them, theirs, transgender, declared, and unknown. Which one are you going to select when you're filling out this survey? It's a hodgepodge. Male and female are biological sex, not gender, and we confuse this all the time. I see social scientists confusing this all the time and calling this gender. It's not, of course. This is biological sex. This is, what do I identify as in terms of my sex organs, male or female? They, them, theirs are not a gender identity or a sex. These are just pronouns that may be indicative of a gender identity, but it's not a particular gender identity, would be masculine or feminine or on a continuum between the two. Transgender is more of an adjective here, not a gender identity. Transgender people will usually identify as male or female or masculine or feminine, but transgender just indicating a sort of a not usual connection between female feminine and male masculine. Then you have 4 other categories here: not supplied, other, undeclared, unknown. These are 4 vague categories that are kind of unclear about what they mean or how the analyst is going to categorize them. So this is kind of a mess, but it shows sort of the state of the art and analysts trying to figure out how best to ask these particular questions and identifying how people are identifying and sort of non-binary and this non-binary awakening. So I'm doing collecting data now. I've actually finished collecting this particular survey, and I've moved on to focus groups of these respondents. This 2021 TIVA study, TIVA standing for Technology Evolution and Volunteer Administration, is an online survey that focuses on adaptation of technology use by individual volunteer administrators during the pandemic. So this is data we'll be working with in a book the rest of the summer and through the rest of the fall. My study population here is about 900 people in the United States and Canada who have certification in volunteer administration. So the work is being done in partnership with the Council for Certification in Volunteer Administration that manages, hands out this certification in the United States and Canada. So there's about 900 of these people. We went out to these about 900 people with an invitation to participate in a survey. Well, I wanted to get a handle on sort of respondent gender or sex. All right, Kimberly, I just pressed a button and it blew my, I don't know how much time is left. Okay, I'm going to be watching you, so you'll tell me. Here's what I did. What set of pronouns do you most identify with? That's the Hager approach in this particular survey. I didn't ask about are you male or female, man or woman. I said, what set of pronouns do you most identify with? He, him, she, her, they, them, and other with a write-in option. This seemed to work reasonably well for my purposes. I got one minor pushback from a respondent in Burnaby, Canada. She wrote and said, I've just completed the survey online. I've got a couple observations about this. I asked 2 questions I thought were not related, such as which pronoun I go by and what's my year of birth. My age range would have been better. That's a good point. The pronoun question, in my opinion, is not necessary information for the nature of this survey about technology. I wrote her back and said, okay, I see it's sort of an odd question, but I really need to know who are the male men here and who are the female feminine people here who might be more binary when I'm doing the analysis for my study. She wrote back and said, okay, that seems reasonable. So, I responded to the minor pushback on this particular question. I did have one person that said other. They selected the other category on my 5 categories here. She wrote in Ms. She wasn't quite sure what I was getting at here. And so I guess we shouldn't be surprised if our social scientists are confused on what's non-binary, what's the differences between sex and gender, that this respondent wrote in Ms. here. That's an easy one for me. I'll recode this to she/her, and I've solved that particular question. My quandary then is about they, them. I have 4 respondents, only 4 people, but these are 4 important people, not necessarily critically important to me in my study of volunteer administrators, but I think this is important to them, that they selected and had the opportunity to select something besides he and she on this survey. One of these respondents is a volunteer coordinator in a local LGBT center, so I like to think it was respectful to her on my part that she's able to select, I said she, they, I don't know what that they are able to select a they, them option here. Mostly she, hers here. These are volunteer administrators, not surprising then there. A nice sampling of he, hims there at 8.8%. A fair amount of people that are skipping this, right? They don't like this question. They don't know how to respond to this question. They have religious or social or age. They don't like this question. But we have this 0.7% for respondents here that are selecting they, them. Here's my catch-22. I think offering an alternative to male, female, masculine, feminine here aims for both validation and validation of the respondents themselves. And it aims for better measurement validity. If this is a non-binary issue here that we're trying to capture, then not just asking about the two ends helps in terms of measurement validity. The issue here is that we have only 4 cases. This is not enough to treat as a separate candidate in a large N study of any kind. I'm not going to break out four cases here in my study of volunteer administrators. So I told my wife that when we were talking about this over breakfast one day, and she said, but wait, you collected this. You are being respectful to your respondents. So as soon as you either delete these cases or not use them in your analysis or sort them in one category or the other, you have re-erased these respondents. You respect them on the one hand, but then you erase them when you're doing the analysis. I said, okay, I'll go and I'll workshop this at the ISTR meeting. I'll put it in front of Teresa and Kimberly and Mel and Gerald and Kara and anybody else in the room and ask them what would you do in this? What do we do? We've got a catch-22 here. We have them, we want to respect. Deleting them re-erases them. Methodologically, what do you do with these 4 cases? I crave your reactions to this catch-22.
Good question. I wonder if you wrote which gender do you identify with? Do you think you'll have the same issue? And with 900, you could easily get a research assistant to kind of parse out those data.
I presume that people with gender fluidity would select the they, them. I would think that would, capture that would sort out exactly the same. What would you expect, Teresa?
Probably. I agree with your wife. I don't think you should delete them. I think there's been enough of that going on, and to categorize them somehow.
How? What would you do here? All right, not delete them. I get that. 4 is not enough, right? I didn't give you my ends anywhere, did I? But I have, hundreds and hundreds of women, probably almost 100 men, but I can't have these 4 cases as a separate category throughout this report. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Mel, what would you do?
Just a few idle thoughts here. One is that the gender labels miss a lot of movement. That it captures how someone identifies right now, but not how they got there. So you might want to have 2 different variables in there. One might be sex at birth, or you might be gender identity with a set of categories. But one of the issues is that those, for analysis purposes, those are unlikely to be easily ordered categories. So you couldn't do, for example, ordered logit or ordered probit work on something like that. But I think it's something to think about. I don't think this next thought will be especially helpful here, but at least there is a precedent of sorts, and that's the Kinsey scale on sexual identification. And the Kinsey scale is ordered. And one might wonder whether there is the possibility of creating something that is similar to that. My suspicion is no, but at least it may be worth some additional thinking.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll end up with some complexity there. I mean, with your first suggestion or the second suggestion. So, did I hit my 18 minutes there, Kimberly?
You still have 10 seconds, but I think we'll go ahead and call it, 'cause we'll have a little more time at the very end. But thank you very much. Really an interesting question. I agree with your wife as well, that it's important to not delete since you've given an opportunity for a response. So I appreciate you bringing the question, and I think you got some good feedback, and we can come back to this